It was one of those afternoons when life seemed to move in slow motion, where every sound felt distant, and every heartbeat echoed louder than the world itself. The sky was bruised with storm clouds, the air heavy with the scent of rain, and on a quiet suburban road, something unthinkable was about to unfold. A little girl, no more than 7, stood trembling on the edge of the road, her tiny hands clenched around a worn-out pink backpack, tears streaking down her cheeks as she screamed for help. Passing cars didn't stop. People stared, unsure, hesitant. But what happened next would change everything, not just for her, but for everyone who witnessed it that day. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that goodness still exists, and your support keeps them alive. Her name was Mia, a little girl with tangled brown hair and a heart too big for her small frame. That day, she had been walking home from school with her mother, Clara, a single mom who worked 2 jobs to keep their small world running. The rain had started suddenly, and Clara had stopped by a nearby shop to grab an umbrella while Mia waited outside. It was supposed to be just a few minutes. But then, the crash happened. A screech of tires, a shattering of glass, and a scream that sliced through the air like a blade. A car, out of control, swerved onto the sidewalk, slamming into the small shop front. Clara was inside. The world around Mia turned into chaos, people shouting, smoke rising, metal groaning. She ran toward the wreckage, calling for her mother, but the entrance was blocked by debris and flames starting to lick up the walls. Nobody seemed to move fast enough. Everyone was shouting, filming, or just standing frozen in shock. And then, from the distance came the low growl of engines. 3 bikers, big, leather-clad men riding massive Harley-Davidsons, were cruising down that very street, their black helmets gleaming under the gray sky. They weren't the type most people would approach, rough around the edges, tattooed, with a presence that made people step aside. But fate had chosen them for something far greater that day. As they approached the chaos, the bikers slowed. The leader, Rex, noticed the little girl in the middle of the road, waving her arms and sobbing uncontrollably. He pulled his bike to a stop just a few feet from her. Behind him, Diesel and Hawk, his longtime friends, exchanged glances. They'd seen accidents before, but the look in that little girl's eyes wasn't something they could ignore. Mia ran to them, grabbing Rex's jacket, gasping for breath as she cried, "My mom! She's in there! Please, somebody help her!" Without a second thought, Rex jumped off his bike. His boots splashed through puddles as he rushed toward the burning shop. Diesel called out for someone to bring a fire extinguisher, while Hawk directed the few panicked bystanders to step back. The bikers weren't medics, they weren't firefighters, but in that moment they became exactly what Mia needed them to be, heroes. Rex used his bare hands to move the lighter debris blocking the doorway. The heat was unbearable, smoke thick enough to sting the eyes. Inside he could hear faint moaning. A woman's voice, "Clara!" He pushed harder, ignoring the pain as splinters cut into his arms. Diesel grabbed a metal bar and helped pry away a beam that had collapsed across the entry. Together, coughing, choking on the smoke, they made their way inside. Clara was lying near the counter, her leg pinned under a fallen shelf. Blood streaked her forehead, and she was barely conscious. Rex tried to lift the shelf, but it wouldn't budge. Diesel joined him, muscles straining, the sound of cracking wood echoing in the smoke-filled air. "Hang on, ma'am," Rex muttered through gritted teeth. "We've got you." Outside, Mia screamed her mother's name. Hawk knelt beside her, keeping her close, shielding her from the sight of the flames. He had a daughter once, years ago, before life had turned rough, before mistakes had torn his family apart. Seeing Mia was like seeing a memory he'd lost. He couldn't let history repeat itself. Finally, with one last heave, Rex and Diesel freed Clara. They carried her out, one arm around each shoulder, stumbling through the door just as the fire department arrived. The moment they crossed that threshold, the ceiling inside gave way with a thunderous crash. They'd made it out, seconds before it would have been too late. The crowd that had gathered began to clap, cheer, and cry all at once. But the only sound Mia heard was the faint whisper from her mother's lips as she reached for her daughter's hand, whispering, "You're safe." Rex laid Clara gently on the ground while paramedics rushed to take over. His hands were trembling, his jacket covered in soot and blood, his eyes red from the smoke. Diesel and Hawk stood beside him, quiet, their tough exteriors softened by what they'd just done. The firefighters quickly extinguished the remaining flames, And as the ambulance doors closed, Mia turned to the three men who had saved her world. She didn't speak, she just ran into Rex's arms, hugging him tightly, her tears soaking into his jacket. That moment, a tiny, trembling girl holding onto a biker twice her size silenced everyone around them. It was raw, real, and unforgettable. As the sirens faded into the distance, Rex crouched down, smiling through the exhaustion. "You're a brave kid," he said softly. "You didn't give up on your mom." Mia shook her head and whispered, "You didn't either." That night, the story went viral. Someone from the crowd had recorded the rescue, posting it online with the caption, "Not all heroes wear capes, some ride Harleys." Within hours, millions had watched it. People were moved to tears by the sight of those men risking their lives for a stranger. But what no one saw on camera was what happened after, the quiet moments that truly defined the story. The next morning, Rex and his friends visited the hospital. Clara was stable but weak. When they walked into her room, Mia's face lit up like sunshine after a storm. She ran to them, holding a small drawing she'd made overnight. It showed three bikers standing beside a little girl and her mother, with the words written in crayon, "Thank you for saving my mommy." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she said, "I don't know how to thank you." Rex just smiled and replied, "You already did. You raised a daughter brave enough to ask for help. That takes strength." They stayed for a while, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet gratitude. When they finally left, Mia insisted on giving each of them something, a friendship bracelet she had made years ago. Rex wore his on his wrist from that day on, a constant reminder that kindness doesn't need a reason. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to normal for Mia and Clara. The shop owner rebuilt, the road was repaired, and the video continued to spread online. News outlets called the bikers heroes, but they never sought attention. They returned to their rides, to the open roads, and quiet lives. Yet something had changed. A connection had formed between three rough men and a small family who had reminded them what humanity truly meant. Months later, Clara and Mia were invited to a local charity event, a fundraiser organized to support families affected by accidents and emergencies. When they arrived, they were stunned to see who the main sponsors were, the very same biker group, now known as the Iron Hearts Brotherhood. Rex stood on stage, speaking to a crowd moved to silence. That day, he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "We didn't plan to be heroes. We just did what we hoped someone else would do, for our own family, for our own children. Kindness isn't weakness, it's courage in its purest form." The crowd erupted in applause. Clara wiped away tears, and Mia, sitting beside her, smiled proudly. After the event, Mia ran up to Rex again, wearing a tiny leather jacket someone had gifted her. She looked up at him and said, "When I grow up, I'm going to help people too, just like you." Rex knelt, smiled, and tapped her bracelet still tied around his wrist. "You already are, kid. You reminded the world what it means to care." That night, as the sun set behind the hills, the sound of motorcycle engines echoed softly in the distance. They weren't just machines anymore. They were symbols of something greater, courage, compassion, and the belief that goodness still roams the roads of this world, often disguised in leather and steel. And as for Mia, she never forgot that day. It became the story she'd tell her children someday, about the bikers who stopped when no one else did, about the power of asking for help, and about how sometimes the people who look the toughest are the ones with the biggest hearts. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Let's remind the world that kindness still matters, and that heroes come in all forms. Special request, before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you saw that little girl on the road that day?